Arsenal cruise to victory over Dinamo Zagreb in the UEFA Champions League, booking our place in the round of 16 and avoiding the dreaded playoff round. Will Kai Havertz's impressive performance impact any plans to push for a striker between now and the end of the window? We'll get into all of that and more on this episode of the Chronicles of a Gooner podcast. But first, a quick message from our partners. This video is brought to you by Stocks FC. Stocks FC is the football stock market where you can buy stocks in your favorite players and earn cash rewards based on their real-life performances. To get you started, they're giving away 5 free stocks to every user that signs up this month, offering you the chance to familiarize yourself with the platform. Buy stocks in young players you fancy to prove themselves and watch their stocks rise, or invest in those you see as solid performers who will maintain their value. Earn weekly dividend payments every time your players score goals, make assists and play key passes. Your free loan stocks are eligible for payouts for a month, so why not give it a go? To claim your 5 free loan stocks and begin your journey, scan the QR code on the screen or click the link in the description. I'll be taking you along on my journey throughout our upcoming videos. Join me on the ride, Stocks FC. Hey Gooners, welcome back to the pod. Hope you're all good. Hope you're all well. Hope you're having a wonderful Thursday so far. Are Arsenal through to the last 16 of the UEFA Champions League? Yes, I think. No, who knows? Maybe. This new format's a little bit confusing, isn't it? If we're being honest. Like, I found it so surreal last night. We sat down in the press conference and like Mikel Arteta wasn't sure. None of the reporters were sure. I definitely wasn't sure. Had Arsenal actually qualified or had they kind of all but qualified? There's a lot of posts going around saying it's done. I read somewhere this morning that there's a 0.something% chance that we still don't make it, which is just incredible. Mind-boggling, isn't it? Look, it's pretty nailed on that Arsenal are through to the round of 16. And the fact that we've done that with a game to spare and having avoided the dreaded playoff round, I think is a real positive. And we'll perhaps talk a little bit later on in the show about how I think that impacts us in a positive way and the sort of advantages of managing to get that done. Big hello to everybody in the live chat. I hope you're all good. Welcome along to the live stream. If you're with us on YouTube, please do leave a like on the video, subscribe to the channel if you're new as well. That really, really does help. And if you're listening to us via the audio platforms, please subscribe and leave us a review there as well. That also helps. Let's tackle some of your comments nice and early before we dive into our breakdown of Arsenal 3, GNK Dinamo, which is their official name, 0, otherwise known as Dinamo Zagreb. Bradley says, yes, Harry, but he needs to be consistent with those wages is on. And that is in reference to the title in which I say Havertz shines, but we still need a forward. And in the thumbnail, so on YouTube, in the thumbnail, I've put give him the support he needs. And I feel like that has been sort of taken out of context by a lot of you, just sort of based on some of the comments I'm reading bright and early this morning in the live chat. When I say give him the support he needs, I'm talking about the club. I'm talking about the club who have an opportunity between now and the end of the window to go and bolster our attacking options and provide Kai Havertz with the support that he needs so that we don't run the guy into the ground, so that we don't burn him out, so that he's not shouldering so much of the goal scoring burden or responsibility. Because look, I think with Kai Havertz, there's always going to be that division in the opinion of him, right? That's been the case from the day we heard he was linked, and that continues even when he delivers on the pitch, even when he produces, even when he leads our goal scoring chart this season by quite some distance. There are still going to be people out there that ask questions of him that say, is he good enough? Is he the answer? Is he the solution? And what I am saying is not baby him, nurse him, or anything like that. That's not the point I'm trying to make here. The point I'm trying to make is if the football club give him the support that he needs, if his teammates give him the support he needs, then I think you stand a greater chance of getting this kind of output from Kai Havertz on a more consistent basis. He is on course for a 25 goal across all comp season. He's on course to deliver that based on his numbers so far. And it's funny because the talk has been for such a long time, Arsenal need that 25 goal a season striker. And without that, they're not going to achieve anything. We've got one. It's right under our nose. But some people choose to ignore that. Now, do I think we still need more? Absolutely. This is not me sort of rewinding back on my initial position since this window opened of Arsenal need to go and get an attacker. No, 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 no. We absolutely do. We absolutely need to bring somebody in to give us another option to, as I say, shoulder some of that goal scoring responsibility. We also need some of the other players to step up and shoulder some of that responsibility as well. Declan Rice, getting into some really, really good positions. Scored last night, but isn't always converting. Missed a really good couple of chances, I thought, against Manchester United, and missed a really, really good opportunity yesterday. Martin Odegaard finally getting on the score sheet yesterday after a long old time. He's not delivered in the way that we've come to expect. Obviously, we're without Bukayo Saka. You would argue that Trossard and Martinelli, in terms of their overall numbers this season, are not doing it either. And the responsibility needs to be shared. It's really interesting because I heard a stat yesterday when I was obviously at the game and sort of reading. I read a stat when I was sort of scrolling through social media. Somebody said that was only Martin Odegaard's second goal of the season. And I was like, nah, no way. A player of that quality, more than halfway through the season, he's only got 2 goals. But that's the reality. I know he's missed games. I know he's obviously had that stint on the sidelines and he was out for a long period of time. And obviously that plays into it, right? Of course, I get that. But in 22 appearances this season, Martin Odegaard has only got 2 goals. That's not good enough. That's 1 in 11. So I think it goes back to a point that I've made quite a bit, I would say, over the course of the last month, which is the problems in front of goal, the lack of cutting edge in the final third is a collective issue. And I get really frustrated when we seem to, always take this conversation down one road. And that road leads, unfortunately for him, to Kai Havertz. We'll talk a little bit about him and his contribution last night in a bit. Let's start with our record in the Champions League this season generally, because it's really, really strong. Really strong. If I just share the table with those of you that are joining us on YouTube right now, I'll be able to share with you guys how the Champions League table looks at the moment. Liverpool, of course, top on 21 points. Barcelona in second on 18 points. We could potentially catch them. Arsenal in third on 16 points with a really, really strong goal difference of 12 from just 7 games. So you look at that and you think to yourself, some people will say, well, we should be top. There is people out there that really do have such a high fucking bar in terms of like what they think the club should be, and believe that anything less than that is a categoric failure. Look, the truth is, when you consider the schedule, when you consider the injuries, when you consider some of the fixtures that we had, particularly earlier on in our Champions League campaign, to be in this position is really, really good. Really, really strong. We've barely conceded a goal in the league phase. I think we've conceded 2 goals so far. And I just I screenshotted something yesterday, which I just like to relay to you guys. Here it is. Arsenal are yet to concede a goal from open play in the UEFA Champions League this season. 1 corner and 1 penalty. That's it. We've got the lowest XG faced from open play in the competition this term. So, yep, we talk a lot about what we're lacking maybe in the final third, about that lack of cutting edge. But actually, when we zoom out and look at how good we are, generally speaking, defensively, and I know that wasn't necessarily on show against Aston Villa the other day, but when you look at that and the fact that we can lean on that at times of need, it does put us in a really, really good position. And often teams that don't concede many goals, they go far in this type of tournament. And I'm confident that Arsenal can give the UEFA Champions League a good crack this season. So, yeah, really, really positive campaign so far. Mikel Arteta made some changes to the 11. Miles Lewis-Skelly was out with a knee problem. Mikel Arteta confirmed after the game that he requires a scan, which obviously isn't great news. Doesn't sound great. Apparently, he jarred his knee. I think that's what Mikel said. Fingers crossed he's not going to be out for a long time, because he's really come into his own, I think, recently. And when he's on such an upward curve, I feel like it would be a shame if he was to spend a bit of time on the sidelines. Zinchenko came in at left back. Kivior came in at centre back, which is quite ironic considering there was this big thing earlier in the week about playing left-footed players at right centre back. Obviously, Mikel thought that this was a game in which he could get away with it. He didn't feel that against Aston Villa. That's not an outrageous opinion to have. Like, I've seen some people sort of try and use this as a bit of a stick to beat the manager with and say, well, he said after the weekend that he can't play with a left footer at right centre back, and then 3 days later, he goes and does exactly that. I think it depends on who you're playing. He obviously looked at the Aston Villa game, a very, very good Aston Villa side, and thought, I probably can't get away with this. Whereas at home to GNK Dinamo, who haven't played a competitive game since December, by the way, who have still got a relatively new manager in Fabio Cannavaro, and who are a much lesser side in terms of their standards and their levels. And Fabio Cannavaro openly admitted to all of that in his post-match press conference. I think this was a game where he thought he could get away with it, and he did. He brought Raheem Sterling back out onto the right-hand side. Jorginho came in to the midfield. A few changes, a few fresh faces, some fresh legs, and I thought Mikel got the balance right between a side that was good enough to win the game and beat what was in front of them and do the job, but while still being able to protect some players and give some players a breather that clearly need it. You know, fresh legs are really, really important. And it was the perfect start for Arsenal. You know, when you're facing a low block, and that's exactly what we faced last night, literally a back five. When you're facing a low block, I always feel like it's really important to get off to a strong start. And if you can find an early goal, what you essentially do is take that game plan that Dinamo would have been working on for the last however many weeks, because of course they've had a lack of competitive fixtures. You rip it up and you throw it straight in the bin, and you give them a problem. You give them a massive problem. What do? How do they react? How do they change? And so when we opened the deadlock after just 2 minutes, I was delighted, because you felt like that was a really significant moment, even that early on, which set us on the right course and on the right path. Did I expect the floodgates to open after that? Probably. And so was I a little bit underwhelmed by the fact that it took us a while to find the second? Yeah, probably. But it felt like one of those games where, you know, at a time where we've exerted a lot of energy, where the squad's been on its knees, as I keep saying, it felt like one of those games that we could get through in second, maybe at times third gear. And so to shift up any higher than that was probably a waste of energy and, quite frankly, unnecessary in a game like this. The first goal was really, really enjoyable to watch. I really loved it. I thought it was brilliantly worked. Martinelli taking his man on the outside, works the ball into the box. And then Kai Havertz realizes that from his position, from his body shape, etc., it's quite difficult to pull off a finish. He's got the presence of mind to know that Declan Rice is arriving in that position. And this comes back to something that we've talked about before, midfielders making those runs, especially from those 8 positions into those areas. And it's just a wonderful bit of class from Kai Havertz to just cushion it into the path of Declan Rice, who finishes really well as well. Take nothing away from him. But that was a demonstration of what Kai Havertz can do as a centre forward, outside of just putting the ball in the back of the net, when you get players close to him, when you get runners close to him. And one of the reasons that Arsenal was so strong in the second half of last season is because those runners were really, really effective. That was getting the best out of Kai Havertz, who, you know, wasn't an isolated figure when the ball would reach him. He had options around him. He had support. And I think as a consequence, you know, everybody seemed to benefit. And I think this was an example of what you can do when you get players close to the centre forward. We talk a lot about centre forwards and killer instincts and all the rest of it. And look, there's no better example of a centre forward that has that killer instinct than Erling Haaland. But let's not pretend that we've not had instances where we've watched Erling Haaland and gone, yeah, you were largely uninvolved in this game. And so I quite like the fact that we have a centre forward that can get involved in the rest of the game. I thought one of the other differences yesterday was that Kai Havertz seemed to stay a little bit more central. He didn't drift left and right as much. He didn't drop deep as much. He seemed to be a little bit more focused on the sort of penalty area and what he could do within that vicinity. And I thought he did a really excellent job. Again, to be clear, I'm not saying that this guy is the finished article or that everything he touches turns to gold. You know, I really, really do believe that there are upgrades out there. And I really do believe that we have a responsibility as a football club within this window to go and bring him in some support. One of his big support players is Bukayo Saka, because he shoulders himself a fair bit of goal scoring and creative responsibility. Martin Odegaard was that last year, but isn't that right now. Martinelli hasn't been that this season, although I think his performances of late have improved. Leandro Trossard is showing signs of getting back to that, but again, he's another one who, if we're being frank and honest about it, is underwhelmed this season. So get Kai Havertz the support. And there were other instances as well where he sort of brought other people into the game yesterday, and you could see that that's a really, really strong part of his game as well. So we're 1-0 up. We go into the second half and we score a second through, Kai Havertz, who got a goal and an assist on the night. This goal comes on 66 minutes from a Gabriel Martinelli cross. This goal reminded me of the goal that Havertz scored against Paris Saint-Germain at the Emirates Stadium earlier on in our Champions League campaign. And I was commentating on that game, so I remember it really, really clearly. Trossard was coming down the left, I think, cut inside onto the right foot, delivered it into a similar area. Kai Havertz, using his height, manages to get there ahead of anybody else. The goalkeeper's committed, and he just heads it into the back of an empty net. So yeah, really, really enjoyable goal, enjoyable stuff. And from then on, you knew the game was done. You knew that the game was done and dusted, and then it was just about getting through what remained and getting through what was left of the fixture. So yeah, we were in cruise control at that point. And I have to say, like, it was a bit of a strange atmosphere. Like, there was a little bit of a lull in terms of the noise, in terms of maybe people in the stadium's engagement with the game, because you were quite comfortable and quite, quite comfortable in the knowledge that Arsenal were going to see it out, we're going to see it through, and we're going to get the result that they needed without having to, as I say, exert too much energy. We were able to make some changes as well. Thomas Partey came on just shy of the hour mark to replace Jurien Timber. Partey going on at right back. Kieran Tierney came on 74, along with Leandro Trossard. They replaced Zinchenko and Havertz. We also saw Ethan Nwaneri come on as well, on around about the hour mark, to replace Raheem Sterling. And that was a massive boost, I think, a massive positive to see Ethan Nwaneri back in the picture. Really talented player. Really, really enjoyed watching his development over recent times. And to sort of see him in a place now where he's back and ready to go again after that little injury setback is obviously really, really positive. So, yeah, excited to see what he can bring on that right-hand side, especially going forward. I feel like that might be the home for him. Like, I don't want Odegaard out of the team, right? So I don't see Nwaneri as a replacement for Martin Odegaard. And I quite like the idea of the pair of them playing together at times as well. And if he plays on the right, Nwaneri, that can happen. You know, that can happen, particularly now while Bukayo Saka is absent. We obviously saw Nathan Butler-Oyedeji come on as well, which for me was fantastic to see, because he is someone that's been around our youth ranks for quite a while. He's been around our youth ranks for a fair bit of time. He's I think he's 22 years old, Nathan Butler-Oyedeji. So you'd think that if he was going to make that breakthrough, he'd have made it by now. He ends up coming off the bench. He ends up, performing. Well, I say performing. He doesn't get really much chance, but just to have that on your CV is massive, I think. Young man, making his way in the game. And even if it is just for a couple of minutes right at the death, if your manager shows you that he trusts you and that you're part of his plans in a UEFA Champions League game, then that must be a huge vote of confidence. I mentioned it in the Patreon pod last night. on the match day reaction. And remember, if you want access to our match day reaction, you can get that by signing up to the Chronicles of a Gooner on Patreon. We're bringing you match day reaction from every single game last night. We came to you from Emirates Stadium, 5-10 minutes after the full-time whistle. There was a little moment where Butler Oyedeji was about to come on, right? So he's stripped and ready, he's standing by the fourth official. He's waiting to get the nod. And Dinamo Zagreb go down the other end and manage to force a corner kick. And Butler Oyedeji sort of looks to his left at Mikel Arteta as if to say, boss, can I get on now? Because he's obviously looking at the clock, right? We're in stoppage time. We're running out of time. There's about 2 minutes to play at the time. And he wants to get on. He's desperate to get on the pitch. And there was this moment where he just looked at Arteta. And because we were defending a corner, Arteta just shook his head as if to say, mate, I'm giving you a chance here, but we're not messing about. We're defending a corner kick. We're defending a set piece in a Champions League game. I'm not changing it now. And Arsenal actually go up the other end and score the third goal, I think, after this. So, yeah, the game wasn't done and dusted at that point. So you can understand where the manager's sort of looking at it that way. But it's about sending that message, isn't it? Making sure that the standards don't drop, making sure that, the bar is continuously kept really, really high. And that's what Arsenal is seeking to do. And look, it's not the most interesting game to analyze. I think that's fair to say. For me to sort of start to run out of things to talk about after 20 minutes, it says a lot. It was comfortable. It was a cruise to victory, but it was a very significant victory and one that puts us in a great position, which I think we will benefit from later down the line. Will we be going on one of those winter training camps? Maybe. Even if we don't, just giving people the opportunity to have that rest and have that break, I think is massive. I think it's massive. Right. Any questions? Get them in the live chat. We'll do that in the next part of the show. I want to spend a bit of time talking about some of the recent transfer links, and I want to tackle some of your questions from the live chat. So get them in there now. You're listening to the Chronicles of a Gooner podcast with me, Harry Symeou. Let's see what you guys are saying. Get your questions in. Get involved in the live chat. I'd love to hear from you. Love to hear from you. Kurt says, Havertz haters are just always going to see his imperfections. No one scores every goal, makes every perfect pass. People seriously sound like every game should be perfect. I agree with the fact that he gets way too much criticism, like way too much. And there are certain players that you would never sort of point the finger at if they were to make some of the mistakes that Kai Havertz does, because the perception of them is very, very different. And as we touched on already earlier in the show, he's on course for a 25-goal season, which would be very, very good, very, very impressive when you consider he's not the out-and-out 9 that people are sort of clamoring for. To still turn in that kind of return would be sensational if he can continue on this rate of scoring and take, us to those sort of numbers. I said it earlier on in the show, and I don't want to keep repeating the point, but I do feel like there is too much responsibility on him right now. And that wasn't the case in the second half of last season because so many others were contributing. And so there wasn't criticism of Kai Havertz. There wasn't that frustration aimed at Kai Havertz in the same way as it has been at points this season. Did he have his moments? Yes. Were there times where people were asking the question about our decision to sign him? Of course there was. But generally speaking, he's been a very, very good acquisition. Are there better strikers out there? Probably. Do we still need to get one in? Absolutely we do. Do I believe we are trying? Yes, I do. I believe that Arsenal are seriously trying to make this Sesko deal happen. It's been a long-term target. They're long-term admirers, and they would love to get him in between now and the end of the window. Is it purely, though, in Arsenal's hands? No, it's not. And this is the thing that, people need to be mindful of and people need to be aware of. Like, for instance, okay, you look at this Benjamin Sesko thing and you're like, okay, we want Benjamin Sesko now in January. All right, first you've got to find the money to do it. B, you've got to get RB Leipzig to come to the table. Then you've got them to get to then you've got to get them to agree to a fee that you can A, afford, and B, think is reasonable and are willing to pay. Then you've got to agree personal terms with the player. There's a lot of layers to this. So this idea that you can just click a finger and get Benjamin Sesko in, not going to happen. Not going to happen. So yeah, I do believe that Arsenal are trying. Can I say with any degree of confidence that it's going to happen? Not at this stage, because I've not heard anything to give me that level of confidence. But I know that Arsenal are trying. I know that, and that seemed to be the general consensus among those who cover the club at the game last night. Okay, let's take some more of your comments. Let's take some more of your thoughts. Out and Out Gunner says, has this team grown past Odegaard in your opinion, Harry? He isn't doing enough. He hasn't been doing enough all season and just isn't physically strong enough at times compared to others in his position like Rodgers. I think Martin Odegaard's had a underwhelming season. We kind of made that point in a roundabout way a little bit earlier on in the pod when we talked about his lack of goal contributions. But this happens. Like, players go through dips in form. Players go through lulls in form. And I'm not ready to give up on Martin Odegaard yet. I still think he gives you an energy. I still think he gives you an aggression in terms of the way he presses, even when he's not at his best with the ball at his feet. I do feel like we've got to a point where maybe people have sussed out and figured out the spaces in which he likes to operate and are doing a really good job nowadays, and a very specific job of shutting him out and making his life difficult. And that then contributes to his performances looking worse. It's on him to find a solution. It's on his coach to help him do that. And, hopefully that happens sooner rather than later. But I do honestly believe that we will see the best of Martin Odegaard again very, very soon. And I'm not massively worried. Look, I get the comparison to Morgan Rodgers. I really like Morgan Rodgers. I think he's a great player. I think he's fantastic. But yes, he's physically superb. Is he technically as good as Martin Odegaard? Is he as intelligent as Martin Odegaard? I don't think so. I think he's got that physical power, but is it just about physical power? I would actually argue that over the course of the last year and a half, 2 years, one of Arsenal's mistakes has been the prioritization of physical attributes over technical ones. And that's got us to a point where people will call us boring, where people will say we're a little bit dull, where we're maybe at times a little bit over-reliant on set pieces. So, yeah, that's my take on that. Let's continue through the live chat box. Anyone giving other people crap in the chat box, by the way, will be blocked. I don't care. Not having that. I don't want people to turn up here to be involved in an interactive podcast online and get abused. If I see that going on in the chat, and I can't see every single comment all of the time, but if I spot it, you'll be gone. You can debate, you can discuss, but there's no need to get personal. As soon as I see that, sorry, see you later. Let's take this one from Moosh, who says, Harry, if you could sign Osimhen, Sesko, or Gyökeres right now, who would it be? Much love from Oz. So I think I'd probably go with Sesko. I feel like he's the best project of the three. I've never been totally convinced by Victor Osimhen. I'm a massive Serie A fan, but even the year Napoli won the league, I was looking at Victor Osimhen. I was thinking, okay, you look really good and you look really effective. But would I, if I were, I beg your pardon, a director at Arsenal Football Club, would I break the bank to sign you? And the answer was always, I'm unsure. And I think what's happened in Victor Osimhen's career since has kind of shown a little bit as to why I felt that way. Difficult character. I know that the Conte thing didn't help him at Napoli. I know Conte coming in and being adamant that he wanted Romelu Lukaku was a problem for Victor Osimhen, and it's a problem that I don't hold, Osimhen accountable for. But I've never been totally sure about Victor Osimhen. I don't know why. Is it a character thing? Is it a temperament thing? I wanted to see maybe more in terms of consistency. I felt like he was a bit of a flash in the pan. Victor Gyökeres, again, like there were people that said we should have signed him when he left Coventry City. And I was a bit like, well, really? Not sure about that. He's gone to Sporting. He's doing really, really well. But it's Sporting. It's a different league. It's a different level altogether. Benjamin Sesko, I would argue, is playing in another league that is obviously significantly weaker than the Premier League. And so maybe it's tough to judge him as well. But I feel like he's got the raw materials that we need. And if the raw materials are there, a good craftsman can develop it into what we need it to be. And I think that Mikel Arteta could do that with Benjamin Sesko. Also, I don't think Sesko costs as much as Gyökeres. And so I would pick him out of the two. So that's those are my choices. Sesko first. I'd probably go Gyökeres second, and then Osimhen third at this moment in time, if I'm being brutally honest about it. Let's take a couple more. Charlton Ronald says, surely the Arsenal hierarchy should give Arteta the support. Imagine we sign a centre forward and a dribbling winger. We could be scary. Absolutely. This is exactly my point, mate. Like, give him the support that he needs, not just in terms of players. Like I talked about Kai Havertz earlier on. Give Kai Havertz the support he needs. Give him someone to share that responsibility and burden with, but also give Mikel Arteta what he needs. Like, this has been an unprecedented season for us in terms of injuries and problems. Right, that's the reality of the situation we've had this season. But even still, before that, you could argue that we were one short in attack. So bringing in an attacker would not just solely be a reaction to the injuries, and because I don't believe that you can have a coherent and strong strategy based on injuries. Like every time someone gets injured, you go buy another player. It doesn't work like that, right? It doesn't work like that. Football does not work like that. But this is something that needs to happen. More so now because of the injuries we've got, but that also is in keeping with our wider overarching strategy. It was always going to be the next big signing on the list. At least it should have been. That was my feeling going into last summer. So if we go and do it now, who's going to have a problem with that? Do it, Arsenal. Go and get the player that you need. Go and support not just Havertz, but Arteta. Rumble says Mikel Arteta has been back very well, Harry. He has. Of course he has. No one's saying he hasn't. But he needs backing further. You know, look at the money that Pep Guardiola's spent since he joined Manchester City. You know, there was a table going around the other day. Let me just bring it up because there's this misconception that, you know, Arsenal are, you know, crazy spenders and that nobody else spends any money. There was a table that came up. Let me just try and find it. I'm pretty sure I took a screenshot of it to share with you guys. I don't know if I did, in fact, on a previous episode. Bear with me a second. But basically, Arsenal were like fourth in a table of most amount of money spent. So we're not top. You know, we're not even second. You know, we're 4 places down that table. So yeah, we've of course spent money, and Mikel Arteta has been backed in a lot of ways. But you know, we need more. And there's nothing wrong with saying that. Like, what if you're building a house and you know you're a few bricks short, and you got to buy a few more bricks, but it's going to put you over budget. You're still going to finish the job, ain't you? When you've come that far, what are you going to do? Just say, no, I'm not going to finish it. No, you're going to finish it. You need to finish the job. And as I say, going and getting a striker or a forward player right now, it wouldn't be deviating from the grand plan. And that's why there's no excuse if Arsenal fail to do it. Because it's not like I'm saying we've got this weird, massive, unprecedented injury crisis in centre midfield. You need to go and drop a load of money on a midfielder that probably in 3 months is redundant in terms of his role in our squad. I'm not saying that for a second. I'm talking about going and bringing in a player that you should be looking at for the summer anyway, trying to make it happen early. If you need to throw a bit of extra money at it, but you're going to benefit from that arrival for the rest of the season, then you do it. Arsenal have a responsibility to support Mikel Arteta here, to support Kai Havertz up front and all the other attacking players who are struggling with the goal-scoring burden at the moment. Go and do some business. And that is where I'm going to leave it. What I will say is I know that they're trying. And, you know, trying doesn't really count for much, does it? Like, ultimately, you want the result. And I'm sure we'll be judged on the result as and when we know what the situation looks like. But they're trying. And so with a fair bit of time still to go in the window, I think it closes on February the 3rd. I'm not going to sit here and start delivering messages to the Cronkies and shouting and screaming and effing and blinding, because let's see what they do between now and the end of the window. We'll react to what they do or don't do when the time comes. We'll react to that accordingly. Thank you so much for listening to the Chronicles of a Gooner podcast. Just before I let you go, I want to remind you that this show is brought to you on YouTube at the minute by the good people over at Stocks FC. You can buy stocks in your favorite footballers and you can watch their values rise or decrease. Got to have a little bit of a sharp eye for this stuff. Have a look at the prices. Invest in the players that you believe are on an upward trajectory. Invest in those that you believe are at a high level, but that will maintain that level. They are the best, safest investments that you can make. I'm having a load of fun with this. Let me be clear. It's not a get-rich-quick scheme or anything like that. Only play Stocks FC if you can afford to do so. But if you can and you're looking for a bit of fun, I'm really enjoying it. I used to do a little bet every single weekend on the Premier League action. Now I'm doing this instead and I'm having a lot of fun. A couple of new additions to my portfolio over the last couple of days. Kostas Tsimikas of Liverpool has come in because I think his stock will rise now, given the fact that Andrew Robertson's levels just declined and waned a little bit. And I've gone with David Raya, who I've already made a small profit on since bringing him into my portfolio yesterday. So have a look at the market, have a look at the players that tickle your fancy, invest in your favorites. And if you scan the QR code in the bottom right-hand corner of the screen, you can claim 5 free stocks to play with. Players earn points based on their real-life performances, which can lead to you earning weekly dividends as well. So you stand to make some money if you do it right, but there is obviously a bit of a risk as well. So as I said already, it's not a get-rich-quick scheme and only play if you can afford it. I'm loving it. Anyone got any questions about it, hit me up. Stocks FC. We thank them very much for their support of the Chronicles of a Gooner podcast. Right, I'm going to love you and leave you. Thank you all so much for joining me. This is probably... unless something happens a little bit later on today, the last live edition of the pod that you're going to get over the course of the next few days. I am traveling to the motherland tomorrow. I'm heading to Cyprus. I'm going to be away for the weekend. I've got a wedding that I'm going to be attending, so I won't be watching the Wolves game live either. I will be catching up on that game on the Sunday as I'm flying back from Cyprus, and then on Monday we'll bring you some reaction to that and any other stories that have hit. I'm going to take a couple of days off because I need it. And yeah, what's the point in going all the way to Cyprus to sit and record podcasts, which I do from here anyway. So yeah, going to take a bit of a breather, but we'll bring you a preview show and some content that will be with you bright and early on Friday morning, and possibly something for Saturday, but it just depends on what's going on. Thank you all so much. I'll see you all on the next one. Until then, take care of yourselves and have a great Thursday. Up the